posed by the desert sun.
He asked, was there a crash? They said, well, these are hypothetical questions. And he gets inside and sees a nurse that he knows. And she told him, you ought to get out of here. They're going to give you a hard time, etc. The officer that was there threatens him. And he says, well, you can't threaten me. I'm a civilian. And then the officer has him escorted back to the Ballard funeral home.
Glenn then claims he ran into his nurse friend the next day, and she was shaken, telling him of her involvement in an alien autopsy.
She made a drawing, described the beings. The relative lengths of the arm were different, for example, from us, and 4 fingers. Skinny little guys with big heads.
The skeptics have a different interpretation. In roughly the same period, a military aircraft crashed near Roswell, killing all aboard.
The airplane explosion burned several crew members so badly that their parts of their faces were gone, their bowels were hanging out. It smelled terrible.
Records indicate Glenn Dennis acted as mortician for the deceased crew.
We think that the nurse, when she drew pictures, she was actually drawing pictures of these burned, shrunk, emaciated bodies. And yeah, they kind of look like aliens, but they also look like what happens when you get burned up in a jet fuel explosion.
Glenn Dennis is one of those who tells different versions of things and quote-unquote remembers things, and as people ask him questions and come back and he's read and more conspiracy theories and heard and talked back and forth with people, he gets confused about the facts. And in fact, we didn't have any indication even at the time of extraterrestrial bodies. All of that stuff shows up decades later.
Spy balloons and government cover-ups, or aliens and their spacecraft?
I made no error in calculus.
Which side is closer to the truth?
I think there was initially an absence of malice, and then, once you start telling a lie, it gets harder and harder to not tell the lie.
I think we do now know reasonably certainly what happened at Roswell. That thing that crashed was a secret United States government spy balloon. I've already said too much.
Our team of experts is preparing an experiment which could resolve this controversy once and for all. And believers and skeptics go head-to-head in pursuit of the best evidence. Eyewitnesses, accusations of tampering with physical evidence, and an alleged government cover-up lead some people to conclude that a flying saucer crashed outside the small town of Roswell, New Mexico.
Now it's our turn.
And the fact that it was covered up and has been continued to be covered up for nearly 60 years indicates that there's some very deep, perhaps very dark secret that's involved here.
What I think really happened at Roswell, something did crash there, but it didn't come from outer space.
It's speculated that the crash occurred a week or two earlier, possibly during a storm. Was what fell to Earth at Roswell man-made or alien? Skeptics and believers now go head-to-head as they present their best evidence. On July 8, 1947, the Roswell incident made headline news in America when military sources informed the media that a spaceship had crashed on a ranch run by Mac Brazel. The official story changed when the debris was flown from Roswell Army Air Force Base to another base at Fort Worth, Texas. These photographs show what appears to be ordinary weather balloons.
Why did they switch the materials? Because they didn't dare show the real materials.
Well, I think it would have been a very simple process to switch the material.
My main response to the question, was the debris switched, involves the weatherman, Irving Newton.
Irving Newton was the meteorologist responsible for identifying the weather balloon. Fort Worth Base Commander General Roger Ramey called Newton to the base immediately.
I went over there and I opened the door to the general's office, and there they had a whole bunch of stuff laying on the floor of the office. And I says, now is is that your flying saucer? And they said, well, yes, it is. And I said, well, I'm sorry. I said, that's a bunch of horse pucky. That's a weather balloon.
He did as he was instructed. If the general said it was a radar reflector weather balloon combination, that was good enough for him. He didn't get a look at the real wreckage. He was an instrument of deception.
Meteorologist Irving Newton wasn't the only one to see the debris. Rancher Mac Brazel and Major Jesse Marcel were original eyewitnesses.
You have some descriptions by Mac Brazel in the local paper. You then see Jesse Marcel posing with some pieces of debris in a room that looks exactly consistent with what Mac Brazel said. Foiled paper, sticks, you can match it up. It looks very similar.
Although the description matches, believers still feel that other things don't.
And the radar target, if you look at it closely as I have, it adds up to exactly one radar target. If you look at the back side of it, the white paper backing, it's totally clean. There are no scrape marks, there's no mud, there's no dirt, there's no water stains on it. So it looks to me there's no string attached to it, which it should have been if it had actually been recovered in the field. It looks to me this is a brand new radar target. They took it out of a box, they broke it up, threw it on the floor.
I'm convinced that what was photographed in General Ramey's office in Texas was not the real wreckage.
Now, someone is trying to say, well, that's a bunch of crap, that really they substitute something. I cannot say that positively 100% they didn't.
After more than 6 decades, the eyewitness accounts remain one of the key pieces of evidence in the Roswell incident. Major Jesse Marcel was convinced that what he saw of the Roswell debris was something out of the ordinary.
My dad went to radar school, so he knew what a radar target looked like. And if it was that, he would never bothered picking it up off the desert. He just left it stay out there.
Major Marcel, basically his field of operations was assessment of bomb damage from photographs. He looked at photographs to see how much damage bombs had done to buildings. That was his expertise.
The skeptics claim that he never seen a weather balloon or radar target in his life, and how they determine that, I don't know, unless they've held seances with him, since he died.
We shouldn't engage, we shouldn't engage in the faulty logic of what's called an argument from ignorance, which is, I don't know what I saw, therefore, it's a flying saucer from Mars. No, if you don't know what you saw, you don't know what you saw.
I think Marcel, in the atmosphere of the flap of 47, he thought he'd found something really unusual. It wasn't his expertise. I think Marcel was out of his element.
Many years later, the military conducted an investigation into the Roswell incident.
We think that this answers lots of questions, and it answers them logically and with integrity.
The conclusion was that the debris came from a secret spy balloon project. Project Mogul was a spy balloon program designed to monitor suspected nuclear testing by the Soviets. It would carry a remote sonar system as well as several metallic reflectors to help ground radar track the balloons. Both believers and skeptics agree that there was a cover-up, but they disagree on what was being concealed.
So yeah, there was a cover-up, and I think there were probably good reasons for a cover-up, assuming this was really an alien spaceship crash. And I think one of the primary concerns would have been public panic.
The truth of the matter is that what crashed was basically identified, and it was not either of the two big things that people were concerned about. It was not extraterrestrial. It was not any threat to the planet Earth. The proof of the pudding is that the Roswell incident went away.
The reason for Mogul was super top secret, but the equipment, which is what we're talking about here, had no security classification at all. It was just off-the-shelf stuff. They lost half of the Mogul arrays that they launched and could care less. They didn't even go after one that went down 15 miles away from them.
Believers and skeptics disagree over nearly every aspect of the Roswell incident. One factor stands out above all the rest. Could the balloon and radar reflector wreckage from a Project Mogul ever match the strange and enormous debris field described by Major Jesse Marcel? Crash test engineer Robert Galgansky has always had an interest in these detailed aspects of the Roswell incident.
I just became fascinated with the debris field. The reason I really developed an intense interest in this particular aspect of the story was because there was something tangible that I could work with. There were dimensions given for this field, there were description given of the debris that was recovered, and I felt that I could do something with this from a quantitative standpoint. No one had tried doing that before.
For the first time ever, an experiment will put this critical factor to the test as we prepare to launch our best evidence. Eyewitness accounts, accusations of tampering with evidence, and talk of a government cover-up. They're all part of the Roswell flying saucer legend. Official reports still maintain that the debris came from a secret spy balloon project known as Project Mogul. One Mogul project was roughly 450 feet long, containing around 24 weather balloons. It had 3 metallic reflectors so that it could be tracked by radar. Project Mogul was created to lift sensitive listening devices to extremely high altitudes. The goal was to detect distant Soviet nuclear tests. The balloon arrays were disposable. They weren't expected to be recovered. Using a model half the length of the original, Best Evidence will now crash a Mogul project in an attempt to create a debris field. At this scale, it will be easier to control. Our array will be 225 feet long when fully extended. The goal of our experiment is to launch our Mogul replica, then cause it to crash and compare the size of our debris field with the eyewitness record. Like all the materials used, our radar reflectors are exact replicas of those used by the Air Force in the 1940s. We've selected California's Mojave Desert and a secure aviation test site for the launch. Computer-generated graphics have been created to visualize the experiment. Peter Chesney is a Hollywood special effects engineer. He'll coordinate the Mogul balloon assembly and test.
This gives us a sense of sort of what we're dealing with. What are the sort of logistical issues of what we might play with? You know, how this stuff, you know, should it be rigged that way or, you know, along the load line itself?
Best Evidence invited Roswell skeptic Joe Nickel and Roswell believer Robert Galgansky to observe the test for historical accuracy.
How are you proposing to bring the train down?
We've got a couple ideas. We've got a pellet gun we're going to try.
Kyle, don't miss.
Don't worry.
Yeah, it's microwire. I think it's
Filament on the balloon. There we go. That's not going anywhere. All right, let's plug it in. Never heard of that. So we're ready to pop this thing.
All right, you got the voltage right?
It's all set.
Okay, good.
Here we go. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Okay, looks like pellet rifle works. Hot wire works as a good backup. Next, we're going to wind up about 400 feet on our temporary reel. We got a little leverage on the handle, and we're about ready to head out of Dodge.
The night before the experiment, our Best Evidence team wants to make sure that the Mogul balloon train can be assembled as planned.
Find it.
To do this, they need a controlled environment.
Hold it there, Pete.
An aircraft hangar fits the bill nicely.
So on the day, you can get a sense of how we're gonna line up. So you can pray to the wind gods that they behave for the morning. So we'll just drive it around once and we can see what it does.
To test for wind resistance, 2 balloons are towed at a controlled speed around the inside of the hangar. The boy